Hey everybody, it's Todd Dills, your host again for this week's edition of Overdrive Radio, where we're looking back at the long run since 1963, the W900 model from the Kenworth Truck Company. It's been some of the biggest equipment news of the year, the revelation leading into the Mid-America Trucking Show of company plans to finally sunset the model. Yet attendant to that sunset, Kenworth has launched its final Legacy Edition special series of the W900 with plans to build a final 1,000 units of the W900 for customers through the next year. We'll run through the details on the Legacy Edition offering today, likewise delve into the history surrounding the W900 with two Kenworth reps.
Kyle Kimball, Director of Marketing at Kenworth, so I've been here for 21 years.
And I'm Jamin Swazo, Director of Marketing Communications, been with Kenworth for 17 years.
The model certainly has a big legacy behind it, built by untold numbers of truck owners through well more than a half-century run of production.
It had a good, long run.
In fact, according to Jamin Swazo, the company is not aware of any
Longer runs out there in any automotive history for a single model.
On the other side of a break, we'll dive in with Kyle Kimball and Jamin Swazo, answering the question on the mind of any prospective owner of one of the final production units of the Kenworth Legacy Edition, or standard W900, still available itself for order through, well, keep tuned.
When the road calls, trust Howe's Diesel Defender to keep you rolling. Armed with advanced IDX4 detergent, Defender cleans and prevents all harmful deposits, including IDIDs and asphaltenes. It also reduces emissions and regen cycles, giving you a 5% boost in fuel economy or more. With improved power restoration and throttle response along with less injector sticking, whether you're hauling loads or cruising cross-country, Howe's Diesel Defender will help you go further than ever before.
Find more information about Diesel Defender at HOWES.HowesProducts.com. Here's Kyle Kimball, Kenworth Marketing Director, explaining how the manufacturer is allocating order slots for the W900 Legacy Edition to dealers.
The way that we look at it is that we allocate those to our dealer groups and based on their past W900 sales, basically. So the last few years sales. So all of our dealers get a chance to have some of these coming their way. So some of the dealers utilize those as a stocking opportunity, or putting in a spec that they think they can sell. A lot of them obviously are probably already out there sold. So we don't have a perfect visibility to how many are sold, how many of them are stocked, but we still have some that can be ordered, and definitely our production starts in around the October timeframe this year, so we've still got some time before we get there. But our dealers right now are getting their orders figured out and submitting them into us.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of interest just from the time at Matt's. And
yep.
That's Jamin Swazo there, Kenworth Director of Marketing Communication.
Online and talking to our dealers, they're pretty interested and excited about it, and it's been a pretty big hit just from the limited exposure people have had to it from the one show. So
a lot of what we wanted to do is kind of harken back to the history in multiple different ways. So obviously one of the big features is the legacy badge or bug, Kenworth bug, or a lot of people call it crooked bug, crooked Kenworth, the badge, the vintage badge on there. So you'll see that throughout. So the offset or crooked KW, whether it's on the interior or on the hood, in 3 different spots on the hood, all over the place, that legacy logo is everywhere. And then along with, you mentioned the paint, the paints.
Kyle Kimball is talking there about a variety of special edition paint schemes from the W900's decades-long history that are being made available to customers for each build of the Legacy Edition.
I think we have a total of 11 of them. So we tried to get a version of all the previous special editions, and then things that were milestones or history making or, pop culture, so like the Moving On paint scheme or the James Bond. James Bond was one that we called Comet. Obviously they used it. They had their white, black, and gold, those type of colors, obviously are together to kind of harken back to that special edition that became known in a movie. And, so all of those all kind of wrapped into special editions that we wanted to kind of pay homage to. And then along with that, on the engine side, so one of the, I guess I'll say, the easier, but also one of the coolest features that we like on it is the Cummins beige engine. So that I think that at Matt's, Jamin can attest to it. He was there, I wasn't, but the hood was open a lot of the time on the truck, from what I hear, because the beige engine, going back to that 60s, 70s style Cummins beige engine, is pretty significant, and none of them being produced. And I know that the Cummins team also thought that was pretty cool when they saw the first one come down the line. They're like, wait a second, this one's not red. Is this a typo? Is this something that we that was supposed to happen? And so they, people at the Cummins plant were taking pictures with the engine too before it was on its way to us as well. So outside of that, I'm trying to think of what else. We have some since 1963 features around on the truck too. So on the little tabs on the seats that say 63, on the exhaust stacks, has a little since 1963 on there, outside of just the big sleeper badge that says Legacy Edition. And then obviously the counting backwards from 1,000 to number 1 on the glove box too. So those are the big ones. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
The significance of those last 1,000, the Legacy Edition serial number there. It's the first time I think that we've counted down, which is kind of a different twist on, that limited run. Counting down from 1,000. Number 1,000 was the one that we took to the Mid-America Truck Show. It's currently the only one that's on the ground and driving. And just a little bit more about that Legacy Edition truck we had at Mid-America, the one we've shown off so far. That paint scheme was actually the paint scheme that was on the first truck off the line in 1963. So we brought that back. Kind of call that our
first W9. Yep.
First W9 off the line. We call that our VIT 63. It's got that throwback look, the smaller flat bumper on it, and just everything kind of represents the beginning, the origin of the W900. So it's been pretty cool to do all that. You see, like Kyle mentioned, the since 1963 are little touches of that. There's seat tags that say 63 on them, and into the exhaust stack cutouts. We've got that there. So nice little throwback moments throughout that whole package. There's a great collection of PACCAR parts, add-on aftermarket components as well, with carrying through that same legacy bug branding through the wheel covers, the kind of always upright spinner style little spinner wheel covers on there, which are actually really cool. Puddle lamps, throwing that logo onto the ground. Wheel or pedal covers. There's just throughout. We did a really nice partnership with PACCAR Parts to put some aftermarket options there too, and chromes and all that as always. And the idea is still to make this truck customizable for the driver, for the customer. That's what it's all about. None of the paint schemes are forced on anybody, but we wanted to bring them back and offer them up and pay that homage to the history of the truck.
Yeah, we had our paint developers or our paint coordinators at the plants help out create, take some of the ones that we did back in the day and bring a new version out that could be painted with the new cabs, new sleepers, that are not 1960s, that are not a modular sleeper necessarily. So different versions that are very similar to it too. So
in terms of the truck itself, it's pretty much it's like it built like the current year model W900s basically. And for folks out there that are doing a lot of their own custom work, I'm assuming it will be very familiar platform on which to add.
Yeah, that's one of the feedback that we got too when we did the 100-year anniversary edition as well. That one of the things that we try to not do is overdo, everything, right? Just because you get the special edition truck doesn't mean that you get all the same exact chrome pieces that everybody else gets, and all the same exact, all the different, air cleaner lights or whatever else, right? If you like LED, great. If you like the watermelon lights, great. If you like you can customize it so each one can be individualized further down the line after they get it. And so that's one thing our customers have said, like, is actually pretty nice that Kenworth does, is keeps it to a minimum, not overly accessorized, if you will, from the factory.
What was the impact of the introduction of that model at the time? Was it instantly a big hit with trucking world at the time? Was it a large departure from truck design that had come previously from Kenworth and others? So just walk me through any research you guys have done in that regard.
So I would say, I think a couple of the big things, right? I mean, obviously our history has been innovation and things that make the truck better for the user, for the driver, for service, everything else. And a couple of the big features on the W9 was that one-piece hood, the flip forward, obviously the kind of the first one-piece flip forward kind of hood in the marketplace. The other one too, from an interior perspective, is the dash panels that swing down so you can get to the back of the gauges. So having just some of those little creature comforts. Obviously, the interior was updated, things like that. But I guess remember back to that time frame. Really, there was only a couple models. There was a cab over and there was a conventional. I mean, we didn't have set back axles and set forward axles and all these different configurations. They were set forward axles or they were a cab over. Like that was kind of it. So it came in on the heels of the 900 series, which was I don't know the time frame of how many decades that was in service too. But obviously with the W9 and then going through W9 and then changing to adding the W900B, which came with the B cab Model 2, and then the true W900L. Each one of those were all variations that helped do the job better too. So I feel like, with the extended hoods, obviously, and the cooling modules were all done to meet the demands of the engines, the bigger engines that were starting to be put in, because they were all, 200-300 horsepower engines, earlier than that, right? So once the horsepower and once the cooling capacity was starting to grow, you go away from the needle nose type of 900 series, and you start getting into the W9 with the bigger grill, bigger cooling module. Obviously at the time just called radiator, but those are all things that helped it do the job and helped it grow. Obviously throughout that time frame, every year, Kenworth production was increasing. I don't know if it was necessarily like such a huge departure that it was. We tripled production or anything like that at the time, but it was definitely something that helped continue it to grow and become that classic legacy type of legacy Kenworth model.
And it didn't take long as we grew those other models and kind of variations of the model, I should say. And, then it became an iconic, driver's truck and interior and living space out on the road. And it paired perfectly with a time in the industry where that was kind of a sexy role and a job, and you're out there on the road and you're a truck driver, and paired with all those pop culture, highlights of the truck, and it just really integrated into the fabric of trucking, and that's when it really, really took off.
Golden age of trucking, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's one of the things, we're trying to represent and make sure we're doing our justice to the truck and to everybody that's driven the truck and had it be a part of their families and their businesses and everything for the last 62 plus years now. Mm-hmm. So we really want to just kind of help recognize and tell those stories.
The classic Smokey and the Bandit film featured a W900. Likewise, the Moving On TV series, at the true point of takeoff for the model in the 1970s, as Kyle Kimball described. He went on to note the company's involvement in other movies in later decades, too.
We as Kenworth Corporate also got involved with the 007 timeframe, so late 90s. We actually built, I think it was three or four trucks that were uniquely built and set up for, the wheelie scene, and there's, rollover type of stuff or whatever it is. There's different trucks that were used in different scenes there, which is just kind of cool too. We've done a few other things like that throughout the years, but it's neat to see that, unique and the partnership in a movie production like that too.
Is one of the paint schemes on the Legacy Edition the Smokey and the Bandit truck?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's always the struggle of trademarks where it comes to movies, and who owns it, where's it at still today. We actually had that paint scheme before, but then the black or really dark brown or black, I think there's kind of some history there that whether it's really dark brown and gold or if it's black and gold, but that those colors were popularized by the movie itself, obviously, with the quintessential trailer, Western themed trailer.
With the Peterbilt 359, 379, and 389, the Kenworth W900 series has certainly been the mainstay truck model on the custom equipment scene through the years, with an aftermarket supplier industry thriving around it. I asked Kyle Kimball and Jamin Swazo what they envision for its successor W990 model in future. Unlike the Peterbilt 589 introduced in recent years, the W990 has already put several years of history behind it itself. And Overdrive's seen well more than one out there at a truck show with plenty in the way of modification done to it. Here's Kyle Kimball speaking to potential for W990 model changes.
We're always looking at changes or any updates or anything like that to any of our models. T680, T880, W990, any of those. I think that the big thing on the W990 is a lot of that was with the wider cab and the more room in the cab and the more the newer safety features and everything else that come along with that truck. Obviously, that's becoming more and more of almost a demand in the field, right? Electrical architecture, everything else is newer. And obviously, one of the big characteristics of us going over to that is emission systems and the newer engine series and after treatment systems, everything that's needed on the trucks today or going into the future. So the W990 really, I think that it's been, you see it customized out there too. There are a lot of customizers that are out there. We actually had one of them in our booth at Mid-America that was pretty heavily customized. So it's definitely, it gets to that growing the business. And I think that you're right. On the Peterbilt side, they shifted over right from 389 over to 589. But we've had the W990 out there for a while and kind of growing it. It's adopted into a lot of those reward trucks or owner operator applications. I think one of the big things our styling department likes to say is that the W9, what it had on it, the difference between the 389 or Peterbilt is the kind of that lower looking out from a low vantage point over a wide grill on a 389 versus on the Kenworth it was kind of that sitting tall, kind of looking out over the skinny, the narrow hood. And so there's definitely that still up tall with the spear on the W990 that kind of has that own the road type of a vibe on the 990. So are we never going to change it? No, probably not. I'm sure we'll be changing it and at some point here, but yeah, nothing short term that we can talk to.
The truck we had in the booth at Mid-America, I think, was anytime you have a truck that is more of a truck that's driver focused and it's a truck for looks more than efficiency. I'll say that, right?
Yep.
It's a personality,
or as much as, let's say,
right. It comes with a personality. People are going to have opinions, and I think we continue to bring different things to the W990. We brought the flat roof option to the 52-inch sleeper, which has been pretty popular. And I heard people's comments in the booth, and I think it changed some opinions as they start to see what you can actually do with W990s from a customization standpoint. That truck in the booth was really well received, and people were like, "Wow, that's actually a really cool truck."
Yeah.
As Kyle mentioned, it wasn't intended to replace the W900. Obviously, we've run them in parallel for 7 years now, and it'll continue into next year, but it does have a place. We see a big Facebook, W990 enthusiast group where people are sharing pictures and customizations, and that's grown. And so there's a lot of really cool things you can do with that truck. It's not a W900, but I would expect some people to look to that for future conventional long hood, customization opportunities.
I suspect so. Whose truck was that in the booth? Was it one you guys did on your own, or was it customers?
We wanted to kind of showcase not only the Legacy Edition W9, but also show kind of a throwback W900A, which was one of our. We reached out to one of our dealer groups, MHC, and asked them about the opportunity of showcasing a W900A, one of their customers, and which that custom one came up and it happened to be green, so we kind of leaned into that green theme, and we actually had MHC build a W990 and kind of do a custom, a new version of that W900A. So that's what they threw a lot of the old school lights, the incandescent lights, the watermelon lights on it, and more lights on the roof, and a lot of the different. They did I think that was the first one that they did a one-off sun visor on it that had never been done before. Different bumper, handmade bumper that they put on it, lowered it down, did some other pretty trick stuff to it. So
Yeah.
that was that. So MHC, I think that I'm not mistaken, they had it for sale there basically. So at the show, I think it's probably sold by now. I bet, but yeah, it's that MHC basically brought it out, and big shout out to the Joplin, Missouri MHC team for that.
You can find a couple pictures featuring the early 1980s W900A and the custom W990 model MHC build, both featuring the quote-unquote Cape Cod paint design and numerous other mods, in the post that houses this podcast for May 5th, 2025 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. And in case you were wondering, I know I have been myself, I asked Kimball and Swazo whether they had seen someone put a modified can-style breather on a W990 yet.
I have not seen one that has actual external air cleaners mounted to it. Yeah, there's width, but I mean, obviously it's somewhat doable. It's not the big 15-inch ones. Usually it's a bit smaller that you can get away with, but that was one of the big to-dos of how do we go about that for the W990 back when we launched it too. So I know that's one of the characteristics that sets it apart and makes it different from the W9 for sure.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any that have actually been. Trying to think about it, I haven't seen any that have an actual external air cleaner. Yeah.
Just I think the most common customization on W990 intakes is painted versus chrome, and people do a really cool job of painting those intakes to match their truck or to give a contrast color,
especially if it's
get a pinstripe through it
or whatever. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Have you yourself seen the can-style breather on the W990? I was out at the Crossroads Truck Meet in California, Missouri this weekend too, at the site of the Horse and Buggy Accessories Custom Shop, and no one I talked to there had seen one either. If you've pursued it or seen someone do it, send us a tip for sure. In any case, big thanks to Kyle Kimball and Jamin Swazo for their time for this one. As for the 999 trucks left for the final W900 Legacy Edition series, if you're looking to be the owner of one of them, time is now, said Kimball, to get those orders in.
Getting a slot at the dealership location is one of the first ones. Some of the locations may only have one in their dealer network or whatever too, because they don't typically sell a lot of them. So, once it starts going and getting to the point where there's fewer and fewer left available out there. I mean, obviously we have time because we're starting to build them in October and we're going through around, I'll call it sometime around the middle of next year. That's obviously we have some time to fill up order boards, but yeah, we're expecting sometime around mid this year to be pretty well sold out on our side, but then that's up to the dealers of who's got one coming.
But want to make sure we call out too, you can still get a non-legacy edition W900 in parallel. Those will continue to run into next year. But the last W9 off the line here in Renton, Washington, at the plant there, will be number one of the Legacy Edition. So you can still get a non-Legacy Edition and get your orders in for those two while you can before we close the book on that next year. But the last one off the line will be number one. Our kind of campaign for the W900 Legacy Edition is we built a truck, you built a legacy, and that's kind of calling out that legacy I talked about earlier, the drivers and owners and people that have been a part of the W900 story since 1963. And we're wanting to go reach out to those folks and hear their stories. So we'll start kind of a more engagement, outreach campaign to kind of tell more of those stories through our social media channels and through our Kenworth World's Best online magazine and feature some of these W900 customer profiles and really kind of take a look back. And so that's kind of where we're headed with this.
With the ATHS, American Truck Historical Society, we have about something like 60,000 photos or negatives, I should say, in our archive too, on our side. And it's something that it's here. We want it to be kept safe and kept in a good location too. So we're working on getting that actually shipped out, all those archives out to the ATHS headquarters in Kansas City. where they can, store them in a proper location. It's not necessarily stored in the best location here right now. So we're working on getting that out there, and they're going to work on an archival and a project that would be, obviously longer term to scan and, make those available out there to ATHS members too. So we're pretty excited. We have everything from call it the 30s and 40s all the way up till like around the mid to late 70s. Of a lot of stuff that we produced here throughout the years of content and trucks and option content and whatever else that the ATHS group, those enthusiasts and restoration experts on trucks will find pretty handy.
That's a wrap on this edition of Overdrive Radio. Find a link to a video featuring the Legacy Edition for Mats and other W9 coverage in the show notes wherever you're listening. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Overdrive's Facebook page and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review there if you're enjoying these, and here's a big thanks in advance for it. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Whammick, Terry Tusas Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Jim Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator Jasmine Campbell, senior editor Matt Cole, executive editor Alex Lockie, video editors Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Blunt. See you next time.